I would like to open with a quick disclaimer. We are not trying to offend anybody who does not let their kids play fantasy role-playing games due to their beliefs. That is completely your decision. You are not doing anything wrong. We are just here to talk about how this episode misrepresents a group of people. Would anyone else like to say anything?
Not a disclaimer.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where you're gonna go talking about this subject. I wasn't gonna touch on any of those issues. I was just gonna say, this episode,
I know,
maybe a little overkill. That's pretty much my beef with this episode.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm gonna read the description in a minute.
I think we should let Will go first, because he obviously has a lot to say.
I just didn't want to offend anybody or make it sound like if you don't let your kids play fantasy role-playing games, you're doing something wrong. Okay. So finally, the reason we're doing...
kids want to play fantasy role-playing games.
Okay, that's true, and we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so...
Finally,
moving on to the episode, Castles and Cauldrons, Parts 1 and 2. Originally aired August 4th and 11th, 1990. Jimmy Barkley begins to play a role-playing game of his cousin and is drawn into the strange experiences and occurrences associated with the game. Alright. So... we're going to start with the most obvious thing. They got tabletop RPGs and a LARPing mixed up.
Well, some people still do that, but yeah, I do agree. I don't know how many people who, like, totally walk around the woods playing the game while there's also, like, a board kind of thing, or, like... Wait, was there ever a board in the... yeah, there was.
Because
he comes and breaks it across his knee. Bam!
No, that was mine.
Was yours.
Yeah.
Actually, we can just quickly address that point now. When he breaks it, and then when he says he destroyed all the stuff... Okay, first off, that makes it sound like if you're a Christian, you're in the right to destroy anything you think is unholy. And two, shouldn't they have just given it to Len?
That's exactly what it means.
Okay, good.
Honestly, they should have... I agree that he should have destroyed it.
I agree, but they should have given it to Len's parents to destroy. I get maybe like in the heat of the moment, Will was just so pumped up with adrenaline he broke the board. But
it seemed like his parents really had no idea what was going on with him.
I'm gonna be honest, he probably just threw it away. Like, that's probably what he did. He probably did, like, burn
he probably
it.
didn't go
He said
inside and burn it.
That probably means throw away. Destroy is a better word than I threw that away. It's like, I destroyed it.
Okay. Back on to where I was getting at the beginning. So we had a teacher who always talked about these LARPers in his front yard. So,
yeah.
So, and I can tell you...
I just used to sit there and watch, never mind the fact that I once told a story that a drug bust happened across my street, so there has to be a house across your street for that to happen.
Okay, so I've been down this guy's street before. There is a physical location where there could be LARPers.
Okay, was there a house?
Yes.
Okay, well... Let's
move away.
House. Move away. We're getting really off topic here, and we don't need to talk about this.
We can talk more about it later. But, okay, so there's a couple things. One, Len is so unhinged from the beginning. I don't know why Jimmy was so quick to trust him.
Well,
because he's 10.
I think the real question is why his dad let him, like, hang out with him so much and do whatever Len wanted him to do.
I think there's one. I think he thought it would be good for Jimmy. It would be good for Len. It is a little weird.
I kind of question Mr. Barkley's judgment.
Yeah, because here's the thing. If Gabe was coming to our house because he was having a drug problem, my mom would tell us that beforehand before we do anything stupid. Now, granted, we're way older than Jimmy was in this episode. All of us are, but...
Right.
And Gabe is not on drugs, nor do we think he is, just to clear the air there. But, and then Mr. Barkley tells Jimmy, well, Jimmy is taking a bath.
Yeah, well, how old was he? Like, do we know? 8 or 10?
8 or 10, probably, based off the ages and how soon he goes into adolescence.
I'm guessing he's probably 8, just because
yes.
He was so impressionable.
Yeah, now, it's his dad, so the bath thing isn't that scary, but I've always self-censored that scene as him being in a bubble bath.
I think he was just going to take a bath.
No. In the episode, there is splashing.
Yeah, and it's also Jimmy disrobing.
Yeah.
And he asked his dad if he's going to leave.
Right, I get maybe they don't tell Jimmy because he's young and maybe they'll think nothing will happen. Although the fact his parents think he's on drugs, I think he had to be on drugs beforehand, because if he only got into the game like 4 months ago, I don't know why he's in so deep at that point. I know like some people maybe will fall into it, but
he has played it longer and, you know.
Well, no, his parents had said it happened a few months ago.
Well, you can get really invested. You can get very invested in drugs in 4 months. I don't know why you couldn't get very invested in a demonic possession fantasy role-playing game where you summon demons in the forest.
Okay.
And it gives Wit a disturbance in the forest.
Oh yes, Wit feeling a disturbance in the forest. Do you want to cover this, Gabe?
Well, what do you guys think? Do you think that was realistic really at all?
Okay, so I went on a few Reddit forums talking about this episode, and people have had encounters like that, and they've said they pretty much nailed it.
Well,
So that part was realistic. Wit feeling that for this event was a little strange.
here's the thing. If Wit had done it when he met the dude, I would agree, like, okay,
Yeah,
like, if he gets a really bad feeling, but when it's just, they're somewhere else, and Wit suddenly, like...
That's what I think. Like, I can see him having that if he comes in the Wit's End, and after he feels like that, but him just sitting at his house or with Connie, and he just feels like that, but without knowing he's visiting them, like, that's the thing that I think.
Yeah, he drops a glass while he's cleaning it at Wit's End. That's how it starts. So,
Yeah.
Okay, and then we've got the whole thing where... So I do want to point out, this episode opens with Dr. Dobson, saying, these games are harmless, there's nothing wrong with using your imagination, but... And the episode takes a very long time to convince Jimmy to start using his imagination. Just Len tries to egg him on about, you can hear these plastic swords as metal!
Does that happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I clearly remember listening to this episode on a jog.
No,
and
I know that happened in the episode, but, like, do people actually experience that?
having to listen to hearing plastic swords as metal.
Right.
Well, if I'm playing...
Sure, someone...
Well, how do I put this? If you and I are having a pretend lightsaber fight, I'm going to pretend I hear the lightsabers hitting each other.
Yeah.
That's why I think Len's on drugs, because he's hallucinating it's real.
I don't think he's on drugs, but... Okay. So, let's kind of start honing in on the topic is, like, what did they do so wrong? Or what were they trying to do?
I think they wanted to do an episode like on how Satan and demon worship can be a bad thing, but they didn't want to do it directly, so they kind of attacked fantasy role-playing games, and then kind of accidentally did LARPing and tabletop games as one thing.
I see that, yeah. I feel like it was probably one of two things, is that I have a feeling a lot of parents were, like, freaked out by, like, these isolated incidences of Dungeons and Dragons that acted like that, or Ouija boards, and they kept telling Focus on the Family, you should do an episode about this. Like, this is a serious issue. But they're like, okay, I guess if there's an audience for it and they want us to do it.
Interestingly, the Dobson bit is taken out of the version on the club, so I don't know what that tells you.
I feel like one thing is, they do try to say, like, oh, not all these games are bad. Like, Connie says that at one point. But I feel like they didn't show that as much, because the whole point is, I think they were trying to scare kids away from it on the off chance it was one of those demonic... The one in a million of the ones that's, like, demonic and all this weird stuff. They're like, we don't want to risk it by saying, oh, most of them are okay, but some are iffy. We're just like, you shouldn't play them at all. Is how it came
Yeah, I think they would rather
as.
err on the side of making a broad brushstroke that they're all bad.
Yeah.
Instead of saying that most of them are fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually found one where you can play as Bible characters, so it might have been created...
They should have just plugged that one in the episode. Well, you know, Jimmy, I do have this one right here if you still want to play. It's called Bible Role-Playing. You can be Moses.
Yes. Now, And, okay, so then there's the board of Talisman, which, is that supposed to be a Ouija board? Because they don't seem to be using it like a Ouija board.
I feel like it was probably supposed to be more of a... Like, I feel like they were probably trying to more angle it towards, like, what a Ouija board is.
I know the rights are owned by Hasbro, so they probably can't actually say it without paying massive royalties, but,
Is it
yeah, they never really say anything for real.
Oh, right.
Like, I also feel like they were trying to go more after stuff like the Ouija board, but they're like, we can't make a whole interesting episode about that.
No, there's a way to do it. Every Christian knows at least one person who has a weird Ouija board story. I think if they had just gone around the studio and asked, they could have dramatized some of them. Like our religion teacher who said he and his friends were using a Ouija board and had spelled out fish. They go into the next room and all their fish are dead. Now, had that been me, I would have pulled a witch, broken the board over my knee, and thrown it out the window.
That's what they did.
I destroyed it.
Yes.
I think, like, this episode, like, part of me kind of likes it, because it's so out there, it's almost laughably funny at times. That's Donna's doll! Yeah. You did take it?
Well, I think Jimmy could just be in shock.
I get, like, it's like so...
Right, and the thing with Len, I know he kind of just goes along with whatever Len wants. I know it's because he's his older cousin, maybe he's trying to, you know...
Be cool.
Yes, now, we never had that problem in our family because all of our cousins are lame, so,
Yeah.
Wow.
Except us. But, and then there's the whole thing with Len talking about how only certain girls are allowed in. We all know that means girls who didn't say loser and run away.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think only 3 guys host this podcast?
I'm not gonna say this. I don't think it's loserish to play Dungeons and Dragons or LARP. Like, I don't
I'm not
think...
saying that either. I'm just saying that's probably what happened.
Probably. I mean, because probably... Well, first, most guys probably don't even, get...
And Vin Diesel's really into it.
But yeah, I kind of get your idea that they wanted to do an episode about demon worship or, like, demon practices, but they're like, we can't really explain this that well. Like, because I think that was part of the thing, where they're like, oh, they could see she could see through the eyes of a bird.
Yeah, that was a... Yeah.
Like,
I think they tried to combine too many things in a 2-parter that they wanted to cover.
Yeah.
And so they made role-play game scenarios sound really extreme.
Yeah, I feel like they took the most extremist, weird things they could find about the role-playing and just said, let's throw it in and...
Which I'm glad they did that instead of made it sound like you can do most of them, because I think it's better to just for kids to think that you should really make sure they're not bad before you play them.
Well, right, but then the episode never makes a point of saying, here's how you know you're not going to get into anything bad.
Yeah, and that seems to be kind of a thing with Odyssey. They don't really show what the right things are.
Yeah.
They just kind of briefly mention them.
Though I think also, like, parents were probably freaked out just at the idea that, like, oh, you're, like, playing a game where you're, like, mages and there can be, like, demons in it, or even the ones that weren't as extreme. People were probably even like, man, that's a little... Like, I don't want my kid to be pretending he's a mage casting dark spells. Even if it's not to the point where you're actually trying to do it or trying to summon stuff, even the point where you're playing just the board game, probably Odyssey and even parents were freaked out by that, so they went with, like, let's just tell kids don't play it at all.
Although, I feel like they've kind of learned from this episode, and they kind of haven't, because they never really attacked anything this viscerally again. They did not do that when Harry Potter was a controversy. They did not do that when Pokemon was a controversy.
Man, I would have loved to see Odyssey's take on what Pokemon is.
It's animal cruelty.
I think it would just have been like so.
Give me
weird.
your DS. I'm going to destroy it.
It would have been such a weird episode if they tried to attack something that was clearly supposed to be Pokemon. That would have been. I would think I would have laughed so hard at that episode. Cause
it's like Eugene is playing this game on a handheld entertainment device, and it's called I don't know, something.
Monpoke?
The Play Dude.
Yes. And then they kind of like their thing about don't use too much social media was not a very visceral episode. They did a soap opera episode, which was the closest they ever came to being super visceral ever again.
Yeah. But I think the soap opera episode I think that was still a little weird. But I get like the point. It was just supposed to be saying, this isn't real life. Don't think that this is what it's gonna be.
I agree, and as I was saying, they kind of learned from this because like they dropped, but I kind of learned it from this episode because they dropped the Dobson thing from the opening, but then they've never. I don't know why. I feel like this is something that could have been swapped into the lost episodes because it is so uninformed.
Yeah.
Well, so if you could change the episode to make it where it is about roleplay games, what would you do?
Well, one, I would make sure to point out that, there's a good way to do it. Maybe, like, Wit has a group that meets in in Wit's End's basement every Friday night. I almost said his basement. Maybe there's a group that meets in Wit's End every Friday night.
Yeah, not the basement. That sounds a little too...
I don't even say that. I think what would have worked better is if they had just been, like... They had shown an example of a person who played it that didn't play it like this. And, like, it could have been, like, Jimmy knew a guy who played it, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's this fun thing, I do this and this, So, like, clearly state, or show a character that that's doing it.
Like Wooten? What if Wooten did?
Like, now it probably would be Wooten, who's like, oh, yeah, I do that, and it's
Even
fun.
though I could see Eugene doing it.
Right, and, like, just show, like, okay, it's not all bad, and sometimes it's just like, okay, you're using imagination and having fun, but...
And I would also, if they still want to have a Wit feel upset and have a weird feeling, then have him meet... Len first.
Before he has the feeling...
And have, like, an awkward conversation with him or something.
Yeah. Okay, just to kind of... We're starting to get on an hour of recording here, so just to kind of start moving towards the conclusion...
Probably, like...
The wiki includes a few discussion questions, and the only one I really agree with is, what should Jimmy have done when Len stopped Jimmy from telling his dad and Wit about the game? That is one thing. I don't know why when Len said, don't say anything, he just went along with that. That's when I would think something's kind of wrong.
Yeah. I agree. It's like, that was probably a red flag. Like, why?
But Jimmy is kind of the catch-all of, like... rebel, defiant kid.
Yeah,
that will accept anything, but...
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is, I know you two didn't agree with this, but one thing that really bugs me is when Wit broke the board and destroyed everything. I just kind of feel like that should have been Len's parents' responsibility.
Okay, you went over this.
I know, I'm just saying, it's again another example of, for some reason, Wit is this supreme figure of authority in Odyssey.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I disagree with that. Like, he is a thing of authority. I don't think... Like, if Len's parents had been like, you buy him another board, like, Wit probably would have, or, like, it probably wouldn't have. He probably would have complained, but, I mean...
Well,
his parents probably wanted it destroyed.
Well, his parents obviously didn't know what was happening anyway, so...
And destroyed probably meant I threw it away.
Yeah, like, he didn't burn them in his fireplace.
You never know.
Them away.
It's Wit.
Okay, any closing thoughts?
Well, the last thing I'll say is that's one change I would make, and then I might have made this like a Room of Consequence episode just to make it a little more... Let's get into it.
Yeah. I think if they did that, then they could have just almost maybe even left it how it is.
Yeah.
Switch to Room of Consequence.
Right, because that's the problem. They unhinge Len so quickly, it almost doesn't work. Had they waited like one or two scenes in the forest, then he started going a little nuts, okay.
Okay, this is just a minor thing. But if Len's really into this game, does he really want his 10-year-old cousin in it that could ruin everything for him?
Well, it's probably an addiction sort of thing.
Yeah, where he's into it so much he has to, like, play with it and stuff.
Yeah, so this is final thoughts on the episode. We all think they could have done it better, and it's very much they attacked it from the wrong angle. All right, that wraps up this week. Because we're running short on time, just quick score for the album.
7.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7.5 just because of Castles of Cauldrons. Honestly, all the episodes I thought were really good overall.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I'm giving it an 8 because Castles and Cauldrons bogs it down, but since it's only 2 episodes, I don't think it bogs it down that much. Alright, so, trivia question. Okay. In the episode The Worst Day Ever, what song is Mandy trying to play at her band audition?
The Star Spangled Banner.
No. You were close.
Oh, say can you see?
The national anthem.
I don't know.
But yes. The Christmas version of it. Oh, say, can you see? By the dawn's early light. All right. So, I know Gabe has to get going, so that wraps up this episode. Join us next week when we'll take a look at album 30 through Thick and Thin. You can now officially like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at AIO Revisited. Follow us on Tumblr, Instagram at An Adventure Through Odyssey, and email us at adventurethroughodyssey@gmail.com. I'm Will.
I'm Gabe.
I'm John.
We'll see you next week.